everybody. Hi, it's Becky from powertoolswiththread.com. That's my blog. All right, today is day one of our Liberty sew along. We are going to make this quilt top called Liberty by Villa Rosa Designs. It takes fat quarters and fat eighths, and it finishes at 45 by 70. So this is a nice, good size wall hanging. And I actually plan on hanging mine vertically. To comply with flag etiquette, I'll be taking the stripes from here on the bottom and moving them over to the other side of the quilt before it's all said and done. And I will show you how to do that if you would like to do that too. So a lot of you are seasoned quilters. You've been at it a long time and you're not going to learn a thing new from me. But there are a lot of you that I have heard from that this is your very first quilt. And I congratulate you for jumping in and doing it. I think you're really going to have a good time with it. First thing, do not aim for perfection. It is really important that you give yourself a break when you do this because you're going to make mistakes. There's not a quilt that I have done in the 10 plus years I've been doing this that I haven't made a mistake. So just about every single mistake is fixable. And if you come across something that happens and you're not sure how to fix it, you can always email me at powertoolswiththread@outlook.com and I'll be happy to see if I can help. I made myself some notes here and I just kind of want to go over things pretty quickly. We will not do a live on this. I will do a video every day from today, April 5th through Friday, April 9th. And by the end of the week, you should have a very pretty quilt top that you can be happy to send off to a long armor, or maybe you would want to finish it yourself using one of Designs by Juju's end-to-end quilting designs. She has some very pretty stars and stripes and patriotic designs. So that would be a lot of fun to be able to do that and have it all done before Memorial Day. You can use this flag quilt throughout the whole summer, every summer, and it'll be something you can be proud of. On my blog, there is a download, and it looks like this. It is on the calendar of events page, or you can search Liberty on my blog and you will find this download. And this download actually corresponds to the cut pieces on the quilt. I will ask you, if you have questions or you post comments about this quilt, please do not give the dimensions, because if people didn't purchase the quilt pattern, we don't want to give away the quilt pattern. I would just ask you to refer to the download and reference each piece as A through F. And then that way we will all know what you're asking. And if you've got questions about it, feel free to ask those questions in our Facebook group, the Power Tools with Thread Facebook group. I will be using a product called Alpha Biddies, and let me show you what those are. They're little plastic tiles. There's a link to them on my blog, and they are double-sided. They make them in pink and gray and blue. I have several of the blue sets. And what they're used for is to identify your pieces, and that's very, very helpful when you're trying to figure out what piece is what. And then there are a lot of quilt patterns that actually refer to piece A, unit B, that type of thing. It's very helpful to have Alpha Biddies. And if you don't have Alpha Biddies and you want to use Post-it notes, that's fine too. Whatever you want to do. You can use any little pieces of paper, whatever you want. But that way, you're going to be able to keep your pieces straight and you'll be able to match them up to what I'm doing with mine. Now this right here, this is called a project board. It's just a standard foam board. I picked up, I put a piece of batting on it and I put some binding on it. That's all I did. It doesn't have batting on the bottom. I don't want to flip my Alpha Biddies out of the way here. It's just plain foam board on the back. These are very handy to cut your pieces, get everything where you want them, and then pick up the whole thing and take it to the sewing machine. Or maybe you need to move it from the sewing machine, another project rolls in, you can quickly move it out of the way and get back to it. As a rule, I keep most of my quilt projects on project boards so that I know where I'm at, how much I got left. And these are like playing with little Scrabble tiles. You could use Scrabble tiles. So today we're going to cover cutting and fabric prep. And I was going to do an entire video just on how to cut fabric. And just the other day, I think it was the 22nd of March, 2021, Karen Brown from Just Get It Done Quilts did a video and put a video out all about the ergonomics and making sure everything's stable and how to hold your hand on a ruler, everything like that. I will cover that briefly, but I'm not going to recreate the wheel. And so I will put a link to her video below. If you need that kind of instruction, you can feel free to jump over there and take a look at that and see what she's got to say. She's a fabulous resource for utility portions of what cutting and quilting is all about. But we will go ahead and I will show you how I'm going to cut my pieces. On my blog, on the calendar of events page, I put several links to cover the rotary cutter that I use. I use an Olfa 45mm rotary cutter. I have had this cutter forever, probably. This is my first one. They last forever. Don't go cheap on your rotary cutters. You want rotary cutters to make sure that the blade stays stable while you're using it. If your blade has wobble or your mechanism for making it work is kind of rickety, you run the risk of not getting successful cuts. I like this one. Now they make several. They have some in different colors called Splash. And that's where you just push the blade guard out of the way with your thumb and it leaves the blade exposed all the time. I'm not a fan of that. I can't tell you the number of times I have nicked. I mean, these things, you can just barely touch them and you will cut your fingers or whatever, your skin, especially if you have a brand new blade in them. I will go over how to change the blade in just a minute because I know some of you are new and you're looking at this thing going, how am I going to do that? I also will be using this 8.5 by 24 inch ruler. This is an Omni Grid. They make the Omni Grip rulers. I really like this type of ruler for two reasons. One, where the yellow lines have a break, the little black lines in there also have a break as well, and you can actually see your fabric pretty well. You can see the edge of your fabric where it needs to be on the line. Also, there is an extra 1/2 inch right here. This is a 1/2 inch measurement. This is very, very handy if you are going to be cutting 2.5 inch strips, which you probably will for the binding of this quilt. And if you ever have to cut anything that is whatever and a half, then you can use the regular 2 inch line, 3 inch line, 4 inch line, as opposed to having to try to find the 1/2 inch line right in here. So this is very, very handy. I have learned to just love this thing and it's one of my favorite rulers. Again, I've had this for probably 10 years. It's wonderful. The other day in a video, I had mentioned a little bit about fabric prep. On your reds, if you have not done so already, go ahead and soak them in a vinegar bath. And if you've got fat quarters, if you have yardage, you may want to go ahead and wash that. But if you have fat quarters, just soak them in a vinegar bath. I use cool water. I actually used an old spaghetti pot with a spaghetti strainer I had in it, which worked pretty good. And pour in 1 cup of vinegar and let them soak for about half an hour to 45 minutes. And then rinse them in cool water again. I had lots and lots of pink water in that pot. And then Alda from Australia gave a great idea. If you have a salad spinner, that's a wonderful way to spin out all of the water from your fabrics. Thank you, Alda, for that tip. And that way you don't have to put them into a spin cycle on your washing machine. So that's very handy. I didn't have the same problem with the blue. I did give them a vinegar bath. They didn't leave any blue water. All that color stayed in the fabrics pretty well. I did not do any kind of pre-treatment on the white fat quarters at all, just the reds, and it turns out it was needed. And I'm only doing that because I will be hanging the quilt outside and it might get wet and I don't want any kind of bleeding into the white fabrics. To prep my fabric for ironing, I went ahead and used Faultless spray starch with the blue cap, so it's the heavier spray starch, and I used my Cricut Easy Press iron. It gives a nice even heat all the way across. I always use that iron whenever I'm doing large pieces of fabric, and it makes everything nice and crisp, and that way we're going to get good clean cuts. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is change my blade. It's working okay, but how you know you need to change your blade is if when you make a cut, it'll skip a little bit on your fabric as you go up the side of the ruler, and after a while you get to where you can feel that and you know that that's happening. It's time to change your blade. So when I get ready to change my blade, what I do, I have this little magnet. I don't know where I got this from. It's on the end of this little purple deal. I don't even know where to get these. I don't have a link, I'm sorry, but I use mine. You could use any magnet if you wanted. And I usually buy my blades in packages of 10, if I can, 5 to 10. If you get your blades just one, then you would put your old blade back in the case and seal it up and then throw it away. You don't want to save it at all, but you don't want to throw it away without any kind of protection. My husband used to have a horrible habit of these little tobacco-free pouches that he used to do years ago, and I kept these because they're perfect for, they have a tight sealing lid. They're perfect for old rotary blades and broken needles and pins, bent pins, and that type of thing. All right, so when I change my rotary blade, I start, and as I take the parts off, I line them up farthest and work my way in. So I'm going to take off this screw right here, and then it has like a bent looking washer. It's kind of curved, a little washer. Put that, there's two of them. And then there is a yellow disc, and then there is the handle, okay? And it gets some gunk in there and whatnot. If you're left-handed, you can put the blade over here on the left side. And then there is the blade. Isn't that nice? I don't have to touch that. So, put in the middle, okay. And then here's a blade. Now there's two of them on here, so this is where you got to be kind of tricky and be very, very careful. There we go. So I'm just going to put this back on here like that, and then the handle goes back on, and then the little plastic disc, and then my little washers. These washers kind of have a square shape to them for the hole, and that way they fit over that little screw base. And then I'm going to put my little screw back on. These blades come with a little bit of oil on them to prevent them from rusting. You do not need to worry about wiping that off. You can if you want to, but I haven't noticed any problems with them at all. So I'm going to put this all back up, and we are all changed with a fresh blade and ready to go. Now you might notice my cutting table right now is a little bit lower than usual. My husband is in the process of making me a new top for this because it's the new sewing room furniture. So I've got a little bit lower than normal. Normally I would only have about 4 inches distance right here, but the new top is in his shop. So that's why mine is a little bit lower than usual. So the first thing we need to do is cut these fat quarters. I have over 20 pieces of fabric here. I guarantee you every one of them is a different size. So a fat quarter, let me explain to you what a fat quarter is. A yard is 36 inches, so a quarter of a yard would be 9 inches. So that would really only be this much, but it would be this much if it was cut on the fold all the way up to the top, and you would have a long, thin piece of fabric if you opened it up from the fold. What a fat quarter is actually 18 inches of fabric, and then it is turned and cut on the fold, so you still have a quarter of a yard, but you have more fabric to use, which is what quilters like. Now, depending on the mood of the person who cut it that day, you may or may not have 18 inches. You should have at least 18 inches, but like this one here is 19 and a half, and you measure from your selvage. if I were to exactly square this up on this ruler and put the corner right here on my mat, up here I'm hanging off the edge, and over here it's at 19.5, and over here on this corner it's at 19, and that is from the pre-treating that I did to this one. It's very rare that you're going to get a perfect square, and so it's important that you go ahead and straighten these out to get yourself a clean cut. And the way I do that is I line up all of the selvages at one time. You want to find your smallest one, and my smallest one right here is this piece. This is my smallest. This looks like it's exactly 18 inches. They all should be at least 18 inches, but they will probably be a little bit more. This one is exactly 18 inches, and it's actually not bad as far as the straightness of the cut. So I'm going to put this one on top. Let me set it aside, and then I'm going to take all of my selvages and I'm going to put them over here and line them up with the bottom corner and try to keep the lines straight. Generally, your selvage will be the straightest part of your fat quarter. All right, so I'm just going to line these all up. So I am lining up the bottom right corner, because I'm right-handed, of all of my fat quarters. You don't have to put them into size order. You just want to make sure you keep the smallest one. See, some of these are pretty small, but I know that this one right here is 18. And then I'm going to take my long ruler and just outside of where I can see white selvage right out here, I'm going to cut off the selvages. Nice and clean. Now when I cut, notice my hand position. You start behind the fabric, and you can either put your finger on top or hold it however is comfortable for you, and just give one long push. Don't ever pull it back towards you. It is not designed for that, and that is dangerous. And before you remove the ruler, grab your fabric and make sure everything moves away as you think it should. There's always been questions about, should I use the measurements on the mat or should I use the measurements on the ruler? And that's really going to completely depend on what it is that you are trying to cut and how you're trying to cut it. I have taken off this edge, so now I have a nice clean edge here where the selvage was, and now I want to clean up this edge right here. I'm going to do the same thing again. I lined up the bottom, and now what I want to do is I'm looking here at this top because I know that this is a straight edge. I'm making sure that that's right. And then I'm going to get and start again here. My hand is well out of the way of the ruler. If you have small hands, you might have to do it here, stop, and then move. Clean that all up. There we go. So now for my 18-inch fat quarter, I've only removed just a tiny little bit and I have straightened it up. Now we need to make fabric cut A. I'm going to pull this so that the right angle corner is exactly straight. I've cut a straight right angle here, and I've cut a straight right angle here. I am using the lines on the mat for this particular one. We need 40 of cut A. And to do that, I'm just going to go ahead now and start making that exact measurement cut from right to left to get the pieces that I need. So I am cutting from selvage over. I'm not cutting perpendicular to the selvage. Cutting parallel to the selvage. So I have 6 fat quarters. I've cut 4, so I have 24 pieces, and we need 40 pieces. So we're doing just fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that gives us 42 pieces, so I have 2 extra. Great, and look at very little waste. I didn't go perpendicular to the selvage. I cut parallel to the selvage and got all the pieces that I needed. So these are fabric A. On my project board, I'm going to take these and just leave them on one side and put my little A on them just like that. All right, now we need to cut 26 of fabric B. Those are white. I'm gonna put this on my ironing board. The white uses 9 fat quarters. I think I have 8 and my buddy Lisa gave me some. We need to cut 26 of fabric B. So I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did before. I'm going to find my smallest fat quarter. It should be one that is right at 18 inches. That's this one. So I know this one needs to be on top. All these other ones match up the selvages. If you look at fabric D, the measurement on fabric D will tell you that that is actually going to be in the field of blue. That's going to help make up the stars in the field of blue. So because you need 18 of D, and that is a larger measurement than B or C, you want to cut that one first. You don't want to cut a whole bunch of the smaller size and then realize you're short. So that's kind of how I do that whenever I think about how I want to do my cutting, even with a block of the month. I will cut my largest fabric pieces first and then work my way down. It just makes things a little bit easier, and I can always trim fabric down. It's more of a challenge if you have to piece it back together because you cut them too small. So I need to think about what fabrics do I want in the center of the stars in the field of blue. And I think I want to use the ones that are mostly solid white, and then their points can be colored white. I need 18 of fabric D. I'm going to go ahead and use 6 of the fat quarters, and we'll cut 3 to get the numbers that we need. Not a lot of color. This is personal preference. You can make them up any way you want. So like this one with the little stars on it, I'll go ahead and leave that one probably for the stripes. I'm going to trim just outside of the selvage. I am making sure that the line on my ruler down here is straight with the line. We're going to make the cut for D. That's all I need to do to cut for D. And that's all I have left after the star centers. This is D. Where's my... So now that we've taken care of the larger cut of the white fabrics, it's going to be a lot better on my mind to be able to go ahead and trim down the other ones. Now C requires 68 cuts. I'm going to match up the selvages. And I'm going to line up a line on my ruler with a line on my mat and making sure I've got a good 90-degree angle right there. Right, now I am ready to start cutting. Y'all, if you can hear my dog snoring, I'm sorry. She's taking a nap. Okay, in order to cut B, I'm going to need 3 cuts. I've got 9 fat quarters here, all stacked together. I need 26 of fabric B, and that means since I've got 9 of these, I need 3 cuts of that. Give me 3 times 9 is 27. That will be 1 extra. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3. So there is actually 27. I'm going to take one of these off and use it as part of the final cuts for fabric C. And I'm going to continue cutting the long pieces, and then I will subcut into the remainder of fabric C. When I do a subcut, because I've been moving fabric around, a lot of times what I'll do is I will put them like just a tiny bit over a line on my mat, just a tiny bit, to make sure that I start with a clean edge because they shift. And I need 68, 24, 25, 26. We'll count 25 just so it's even. I just need 3 cuts. 25 each plus 1. So there's 25. So there are 25 pieces in these, and I only need a total of 68. So 3 cuts will get me 75, and that's really easy. I'll have all this left. So there's 25 There's actually 26, but 25 makes it even. So there's 50 and there's 75 plus a couple extras, and that's fine. We just won't use those. But now that I have all this extra left in the white, but here is 68 of fabric C. I'm gonna put this on my project board. And this is left. Got nice. Now, some might consider this to be wasteful of white. I will use and use and use. So to me, I would rather make all the cuts that I need and have everything ready to go for another time. And if I don't use these, at least they're in a good cut size for storage. Next, we need to cut the blue. And we're gonna make 2 cuts of blue, and we're gonna do the same thing with the blue. I've gotta trim up the selvage and trim off one edge for a good clean 90-degree angle. Find my smallest one. Here's a small one. This one should be just right at 18, and it is. So I'll leave that one on top. I'm going to cut off my selvages just outside of the white, get myself a good bit of color, and I'm lining up a line on my ruler with a line on my mat. That gives me a good straight edge here. It might be easier for you to do it from different angles. I'm tall, so I've got a long reach. It makes it a little bit easier for me. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm gonna go ahead and cut fabric E because it is larger than fabric F. Get these straight on my lines. All right, I'm going to turn this and cut from this side. Okay, I'm just gonna cut this. Now I can get 3 cuts out of this one strip, and that will give me 15 of the 17. I need 2 more blocks. So I'm just gonna take this extra piece of fabric, this one piece, and I'm gonna cut 2 more out of this in a minute. Now, so I'm gonna put this aside. Now I'm using the ruler instead of using the mat. You can do it either way, whatever's most comfortable for you. So, let's see, 1. See, I don't like this because now you have to move and reposition the ruler all the time. I prefer, this is just me, cutting. I prefer cutting from right to left so I don't have to move the fabric. Okay, that's why there's a method to that madness of doing it like that. Okay, I need 48 of fabric F. And so I'm going to trim up my edge. I put them just over a line. I'm getting 20 squares per cut. 5, 10, 15, 20. There's 20. There's 40, 50, 2 extras. Y'all, it just makes my life easier. That's just how I think. I don't get all wrapped up about saving the largest pieces of fabric. It's just not how I roll. Okay, so there is fabric F, and we're almost, I need to cut another piece of this for 2 more. I've got 7 pieces there. I need a total of 17. There's 7, there's 14. I need 3 more. I want that one, this one, and this one. All right, here is fabric E. So we're all finished. Again, I hope you go over to my powertoolswiththread.com blog, take a look at the calendar of events page, and you will find the download there that you can get so that you can follow along. And if you want to get rulers or mats or any of that, I've got links there as well. And then also we've got our alphabetties all set out. So tomorrow we're going to start piecing. I can't wait to get started. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.